All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashum, Yahushai, Bahashum, Rachak Kodash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and grace and peace to you elect around the four winds, believing and pushing the truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. This is your fellow servant, Rakhaya from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you with another impromptu lesson. And the title of this lesson is Babylon Will Not Regain Its Footing. All right, or America Will Not Regain Its Footing. And the inspiration for this lesson comes from this video that was recently uploaded by the Elder Yashawamba, one of his recent prophecy watches. And in this video, the Elder Yashawamba briefly touches on the recent integration of the Israeli military forces with the United States military forces, which ultimately is going to drive America into an even deeper hole than it's already in. All right, and it's prophetic, because essentially we've reached this point here in Jeremiah 51 verse 9, where it says, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. All right, America has reached a state of terminal illness. All right, there is no regaining the footing that Babylon has lost. And I like to liken a lot of what's happening to a 40-yard dash, or any race in general, to where a large part of a race is predicated on how you start. About 70% is how you start, and about 30% is on skill. If you start off a race strong and you couple it with skill, 9 times out of 10, you'll win that race. All right. Whereas if you start off a race weak and you try to recuperate with skill, you have even less chances of winning that race. And how America has started, all right, just this year alone, all right, with this war with Iran, all right, different terrible geopolitical decisions, all right, lost relationships with the allies, all right, this has all painted the forecast on how this race is going to end for Babylon the Great, which prophetically it's not going to end well. It's not going to end great. It's ultimately going to end with the destruction of America, Babylon the Great, and this is just the beginning stages of that destruction. But the forecast has already been painted, all right, by the beginning of this year, and really the years preceding up to this, all right, and they can't regain the leverage or the footing that they've lost because they've also lost the skill and capability to be the enforcers in the earth. So they can't recuperate with skill because they've lost that capability. Like it says in Obadiah, there is no more wisdom in Teman. All right. Esau has lost all the wisdom and capability that he's used and been able to utilize to get himself to this point. The Lord is starting to slowly strip away his power and his capability of being the enforcer in the earth. He's no longer, the apex predator, because now you have other world powers like Iran, China, Russia, who now have nuclear capability and military forces capable of rivaling Babylon the Great. So the footing that America has lost, it can't be recuperated. At this point, it's gone. So, like it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pain. If so be, she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go every one into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. All right, and everyone can see how Babylon is approaching its final hours. And prophetically, with this merger with the Israeli forces, what this is going to do is drive the American forces closer and closer into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, where it's prophesied to be destroyed, where the armies are prophesied to be destroyed. All right, because a lot of the skirmishes that are taking place right now are happening in that region, which, let's get this in Joel 2 and verse 20. It says, but I will remove far off from you the northern army, all right, which is the Babylonian forces. It says, and I will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the east sea and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his savor shall come up, because he have done great things. All right, when it speaks about his face being toward the east sea, speaking about the Persian Gulf, and the utmost sea is speaking about the Red Sea. All right, and it says, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he have done great things. And the stink is referring to the great loss that's going to be had in that region. All right, the great bloodshed and death that's going to take place. It says his stink is going to come up. All right, because of the complete destruction, the other amount of death that the Lord is going to cause to happen in that land. All right, when you go to a map, all right, and you look at the live campaign, this is a live map of the skirmishes that are taking place. Where we see a lot of the skirmishes taking place is right here in this region of Saudi Arabia and Iran, which this region right here is the Persian Gulf, which I don't know why it's not saying it. But that region right here is the Persian Gulf. And we see right here, all right, the East Sea being, the utmost sea, Salakia, being the Red Sea right here. Okay, and we see where a lot of these skirmishes are happening right here in this area of Saudi Arabia, in between right here the Persian Gulf. And it's going to move closer and closer, into this area. More forces are going to be driven into this area according to prophecy. All right, so going back, it says, but I'll remove far from you the northern army and drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the east sea and his hinder part toward the utmost sea, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he have done great things. And when you jump over to Joel, the 3rd chapter, and verse 2, it says, I will also, I'm going to read verse 1 too. It says, for behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. All right, right now, what's happening simultaneously as the Lord is moving Esau and his armies closer to destruction, the Lord is turning away our captivity. All right, the Lord is making moves to destroy our captor, just like he destroyed the Egyptians. All right, Pharaoh didn't want to let us go. These Babylonians don't want to let us go. All right, so the Lord is making moves to destroy them, to force their hand to let us go, because a dead man can't hold a grip. So what the Lord is doing is this, verse 2, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, or Yahweh-Shaphat, which is that exact region that we were just looking at on that live map. It says, and I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And I've cast lots for my people, and I've given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. All right, and I'm gonna jump down to here, verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears, let the weak say I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together around about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. So right now, what's happening in the world is an economic shift geared toward war. All of these nations are gearing up to wage this third world's war. All right, this third woe, as the scriptures speak about, which is coming quickly. All right. And even here in Babylon the Great, we can see how the economy is shifting toward wartime. All right, propaganda is being put out. The Elder Yashwan was getting into how, eligible these young men here in Babylon are getting ready to be involuntarily enrolled in the U.S. military. So that means a lot of these 16, 17-year-olds are getting ready to be drafted into this next world's war, getting ready to be thrown right out there into the front lines to die. Justifiably so, because they're wicked as fuck. You're going to see a lot of these pookies, these motherfucking ghetto Ray-Rays, whatever, these niggas, we're going to see what they made of. So these spiggers, they're going to see what they made of. These Uncle Tomahawks, we're going to see what they made of. all of this boister and gall that they have against the prophets. Well, use that against them Iranians and these Russians. Hey, it says, proclaiming this among the Gentiles, prepare war. And the Lord is stirring up the minds of these kings to prepare for war. All right, that is the song in the earth. All right, war. All right, war is the song in the earth. These are the times that we're entering into. And Babylon won't regain its footing. All right, it's lost. All right, it slipped at the beginning of the race. They thought that Iran wasn't going to catch on to the decades of bombing that they've been doing. They weren't going to catch on to those strategies. But we've seen how Iran has not only caught on, but adapted to these strategies and really overcame the U.S. military, their forces. And a lot of the losses aren't being reported because Esau doesn't want to, paint himself out to be a loser in this case. But the fact of the matter is he's losing. And no amount of skill or technology that he has will allow him to recuperate other than an ICBM nuclear missile. But now we're at the point where he's not the only one with an ICBM nuclear missiles. The other nations have that capability as well, and they are going to push the button. Thus saith the Lord. And when they push the button, Babylon is going to be destroyed. This great city that was at one point in time, this flourishing city, is going to be suddenly destroyed, like it said in Jeremiah, the 51st chapter. So what's next for Babylon is a bleak future. They don't have a future. All right, what they're doing now are desperate attempts to maintain a falling empire. And these Israelis, these small hats are going to draw them closer and closer to their death. Thus saith the Lord. But with that being said, that's really all I had. Lord, this is edifying to your elect. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rakakodash, and double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Grace and peace to your elect. Shalom.